Greetings again, Starcraft 2 fans. This is Negative Space bringing you a 2 vs 2 Starcraft 2 comedy. I am Negative Space, playing as Terran with my brother. He's my ally, playing as Paladin, a Zerg player, and Korea, spelled with a C, as our Protoss, one of our Protoss opponents, and Icon as a Terran, our other opponent. Now, obviously, we have been spawning on this map a lot lately, but it is a great map. I just hope we don't get too bored of it, which we haven't yet, so that's a good sign. Now, maybe you've noticed here on the bottom again, we've talking about, a lot of the times we talk about how we're going to play. Here we go. We're talking about that just now. In a previous game, one that I haven't casted, we went basically straight for this backdoor rocks, which, if you get it early on enough, it is more difficult for the opponent to be able to react to it or just not even notice. So we had done it very successfully on a previous game. We'll see how successful it is on this game. And here we are underway. They are getting a front door, which many players, especially Protoss and Terran, do a lot. A lot of players actually do it a lot, but I don't do it so much anymore, and I've never really had a problem not having a wall. So I do not do that, and I'm going with my typical build, 2 barracks, orbital command into another barracks. My brother usually goes a pretty early, probably a pretty standard / early spawning pool. Usually we worry a little more about scouting workers, especially probes, but my allies, Zerglings, are about to spawn, so we chase that off, make sure it's not proxying or anything. They're finishing this wall off, upgrading an orbital command, but they are not getting as much of an early army as we are, at least I am. Here we go with this game. I remember I actually built my supply depot out of order. Usually I have my other barrack started by now and then get my second supply depot, but here in just a moment I'll be getting my third barracks down and start pumping Marines. Here we are already working on the backdoor rocks. Our opponents are, one of them's just now getting a second barracks. Still pumping SCVs. The pro wasn't really all that much to worry about. He's just running around getting chased by a Zergling. Very good Zergling, he'll get a treat later. Unless he dies, which happens to Zerglings a lot. Protoss player, pretty typical build. Just getting more gateways, cybernetics core so you can get warp gates and be able to tech. And here our opponent goes. This seems to be one typical build I've seen a lot lately, is 2 barracks into factory, and then it's pretty random. I think it's mostly preference whether they get reactors or tech labs. But here they are. We have a bunch of units here at their back door already, and they only have a Zealot and 2 Marines. But they're chrono boosting out units because they did have something to spot the rocks with. And we'll see how successful this rush is. We're already doing pretty good damage. We just have a lot of units here with not many enemy units, and one problem here is my Marines get trapped. I wasn't watching very well, and they get taken out by a few probes. The rest of my Marines run back because they ran out of support. But the Zerglings here, I'm not sure if they actually took out any workers, but they may have. But they took out this pylon, interrupted their production. This player is getting a reactor on his factory, probably see some Hellions. And back at my base, not doing much. I'm actually behind a little bit in resources. Here I am, I'm expanding, hoping that since even though they're playing on one base, that we applied enough pressure to keep them from pushing back. But here they are. Actually, we can see a bunker queued up already. So the trick is to hope you have applied enough pressure to make them play defensively. But what we do instead is we expand. When they're just on one base, hopefully we will get enough income to be able to outproduce them and gain the advantage back from having to expand, having the expansion, you know, pay for itself in dividends. Our opponent's still pretty much just macroing up. They are obviously getting Hellions, since, well, that's the only thing you can produce on a factory with a reactor on it. Getting another factory here. Income wise, this Terran is actually pretty far ahead. He's got a few more workers. Let's see, we both had mules up, but otherwise we're pretty even, except for this player with a few more workers. Here he is he's finally being able to, he's macroing up a little bit, even though he doesn't really have a big stack of resources. I do, and here I go. I really go for this gambit here, which is something that has worked out before on this map, is double expanding. They're still on one base, so if I pull off dual expanding and my ally is already ahead because he's had his expansion longer, then we'll really be able to pull ahead in this game. But here they go, doing some Hellion harass because there's a bunch of Zerglings here. But this watchtower can see the Hellions coming, and the Hellions can't attack them because of the smoke screen here. But I realize he's bringing some Hellions up and bringing some Marauders to be able to tank a little bit of it to help keep the Zerglings alive. They're still worried about an attack back here, not so much worried about their front wall. They're not controlling the watchtowers to see if they can actually see what we're doing. And here we go with the Marauders, and they must have decided to bring in their whole army, maybe to take out those scouts, that forward army, just to be able to weaken us a little bit, or possibly to push. But it looks like they're going to push, so an attack coming in. I know they have sentries, I saw the sentries, so I am not going to fall for that, get my army stuck with force fields. But they definitely have a more sizable army. I don't have siege tech completed yet, so the tank is only going to be able to help me somewhat, and my army is not even really in position to take advantage of these bunkers. Some Zerglings come in, reinforcements. My reinforcements aren't really doing too well, but all I have is this one bunker, and my ally brings in a few Mutalisks. I bring in some reinforcements, but the enemy falls back, which actually, with this amount of reinforcements and finally having siege tech completed, they pretty much lucked out by falling back. I was surprised they fell back, because that was my biggest concern, is that they would have been able to macro up enough army on one base to be able to do significant damage to keep us from pulling out of it. But here we go, I got the income tab up, and you can really see how I went for dual orbital, which I don't normally do, but I felt that they wouldn't be able to harass well enough for me to need planetary fortresses, and I really needed the jump in income from double expanding. And look at this, with mules I jumped into the 2000 income range when my opponents were still on typical one base income. Now that I have expansions up and running, I begin to tech up a little more, get a starport, reactor. I was worried about not having a medevac out fast enough in case they try to push again, but a few of my units got caught out of position there. But they probably just really didn't want to push against this siege tank. And having siege tanks on Zelenoga watchtowers are very powerful because you don't have to worry about losing that one unit of range there, because siege tanks can only see, they can't see their total range, but on a watchtower they can shoot as far as their range is. But here our opponent expanded, which is strange because he expanded in the furthest position of this area and is keeping his army as far forward. That makes it harder to reinforce, but we'll see how this works out for him. They actually spot one of our changelings there, and they could either camp here, but they do have a pretty significant force. So if they decided to push and find a way to outmaneuver our siege tanks, then it could be very devastating. But my ally has Mutalisks, and Mutalisk harass is very strong with Protoss. I'm sorry, I was looking at the Protoss player. Is strong with Zerg. 14 Mutalisks on the unit tab so far.